So you need a new van. And don't worry, I'm not changing the channel to Nobby on vans. It's still Nobby on cars. This is the Mercedes Vito. And if a Citan is too small and a Sprinter is too big, this is what Merc have for you. I'll tell you all the good points and there's some not so good points in this video today. And van drivers, I get it. I have mates who drive these for a living, and one of my mates, his boss decided to change the type of van he had. He was driving a Transit for years. The new van came, he nearly left his job over it. So I know how important it is. And feel free to share this with your fleet manager or your boss if you're not buying this van yourself, and tell them, check this out. There's 3 different 2-litre diesel powertrains. The entry is 136 brake horsepower, and there's the 119, which is the top spec of this version, which is 184 brake horsepower, but they're all 2-litre diesel. If that's too spicy for you, there's a 116 version pushing out 158 brake horsepower. The latter 2 versions are both automatic only. The entry version is a 6-speed manual. Oh, and if you need an electric version, Mercedes have got that covered too. There is a long wheelbase version of the van. The standard fuel tank is 57 litres, but you can get a larger fuel tank to 70 if you want to go the extra distance. And the latest version of the e-Vito should be good for over 200 kilometres on a single charge, even if you have loads loaded into the van. Speaking of which, you can get doors that open on both sides of the van, making access to it wherever you are. If you're up against a wall, you just need extra hands to get in and out, you can open the doors on both sides of the vehicle. So, you know, it's all about making your life easier when you got to use this thing every day. Whether you were born in a barn or you prefer a lifting tailgate option on your Vito, you can choose either. There's no extra cost for either version of it. One benefit of this is if you're in Ireland where it rains a lot, you could be getting at your tools and whatever while you have this at least over your head. If you get the barn doors, that's not going to happen, obviously. But you know, you're a driver van, you're tough. You're not going to worry about rain, are you? CDI 119 and the other model trims on this side, and Vito on the left. And the LED lights look pretty cool, lit up at night time. They should do, because it's a Mercedes. 6 or 6.6 cubic meters fit into this part of the van. There's an L2 and an L3 version, slightly longer wheelbase on the L3. Kind of on a par with the new Transit, for example, but the Transit is a bit taller and you can get taller options in a lot of the other van companies. You can't in the Vito. It's the one height. If you need more of that, then they're probably going to tell you, well, you need a Sprinter. Here's all the length details and all that, and the payload is okay. It's not as good as some of the rivals. It ranges from 873 to 930 kilos, and some of the others can do over a ton. Some vans can be pretty dark on the inside, and you've got to maybe look at your own options of fitting things. This one comes with a really useful light bar, is the best way to describe it, over the top of the roof, and even if you have the doors open, it stays inside the van, which is really helpful at night time, so your light, when you open the tailgate, doesn't disappear. And you can get a glass bulkhead in the van if you want. Some versions have a little hollow space here, so you can slide things in here for extra storage space. Straight away you notice that it is a little bit more confined in here, so that extra roof height is quite noticeable. It's just sitting over you like a typical car roof. It also means there's lack of storage up here for manuals, extra things you want to tuck away here. You're not going to be able to fit them in. This is a 2-seater version of the van, obviously, so crew cab not an option in this particular one. And the extra space that's created by the lack of a third seat doesn't really give you any huge storage options here either. There is a kind of a bin area down here that things will be free to rattle around in, a bit more storage underneath the radio and the mode selector, which is quite large considering how little you'll probably use it. Then up here for the driver, the midsection and the passenger, there are little storage bins going on. Even in the doors, they're not amazing in terms of space. The Transit and stuff from Volkswagen definitely has more storage space, but this has cozy heated leather seats. And if you're on a job at 6 in the morning or on the way to a job, you'd probably prefer them than extra space in your door bins. I'm not sure, but let me know in the comments down below. Needles for your speedo, but there is a handy digital display as well if you want to keep an eye on your license for penalty points and making sure that you can still drive to work. There's tons of safety on board. Some of it is optional. Blind spot on the car, a really useful reversing rear camera. You're going to want to use that because there isn't even a rear view mirror, obviously. You get climate control, and it's generally a pretty easy system to use. And there's a Mercedes app which has lots of information in that, and that's pretty useful for you or a fleet manager to be able to keep an eye on things if you need to. Vito is rear wheel drive, and if you need to hitch a trailer onto it, there's trailer stability assist, and between that and the camera where there's a coupling mode, it should make life getting a trailer onto your Vito pretty easy. You can get insulated glass, you can get a full head height bulkhead, a couple of things just to keep road noise at a minimum if you're on longer journeys where all the little things can just make the day more tiring. I get it. But again, because you are in a Mercedes, the fit and finish is pretty good actually compared to a lot of vans, and you certainly should feel comfortable. You and your passengers will get lumbar support in these seats too, and these adjustable armrests also help with just setting a nice comfortable seating position for you and your front passenger. The 110 version of this panel van launches from just over €35,000, including VAT, if you're trying to figure out where the budget will go to if you want one of these ones. One thing I love about the Vito is the driving position. So because it's also a passenger van and there's nice beeps to tell me getting close to things and the reversing sensors, it just gives you a nice, good overview of the road, seating position, gives you a lot of visibility. And you feel lower down even though you're in a van, so it just has a better driving feel to it. I also find that it handles pretty well, and that is without a huge payload in the back, to be fair, but I get the sense that it is still one of the better ones when it comes to just driving refinement, if that's a thing. And the rear wheel drive has hurt the fuel economy a little bit, but again, that makes it a more enjoyable vehicle to drive with a rear wheel bias. And it's not quite as good as some of the 2-litre diesel Mercedes passenger cars. You really have to struggle to get them above 5 litres per 100 kilometres. You will see certainly 6s and 7s if you have a very light or non-existent load in the back. There are times you're going to see 10 litres per 100 kilometres. So that extra power, particularly in this version of it with the 184 brake horsepower, will use a bit more juice. But when you put the boot down, the gear changes are slick. Yes, it sounds rattly and clattery, but you're not hanging around for any great length of time. It does have speed sign monitoring. It'll tell you if you're breaking the speed limit. You can keep a visual aid but turn off the beeps with just one touch of the speed camera sign and the speed sign at the top corner of your screen. I do want to offer the word of caution in the fact that this van I'm driving has pretty much 50 brake horsepower extra over the entry-level version, and when you start adding weight to the back of the vehicle, it could then start to feel a little bit sluggish. However, all versions of the van reach their maximum peak torque figure by 1400 RPM, which is good for accelerating, pulling away with a heavy load in the back, and just not having to wind it up to achieve a bit of pull. There's a good bit of noise from the road and the added environment. It is kind of one of the drawbacks of van life, but you can get optional insulated glass, and the extra height bulkhead could also assist with reducing some of the cabin noise. Overall thoughts though, if how a van looks is a bit higher up your list, then you're going to like this. If how a van drives is higher up your list, then you're going to like this. And the reason you may find some drawbacks is just if you're someone who needs loads of storage space or a vehicle that can carry a bit of a heavier load. The Vito van is a clear winner if you want refinement in a van that kind of drives like it's a Merc car. Kind of, I don't want to overdo that one. Where it does fall down is you don't have a taller, height option. Some of the storage options aren't as strong as a better performer like the Ford Transit. And the Transit is always pretty good to drive, but that's where the Merc just has the extra edge. Yes, you have a Merc badge on the front, but some would say you're paying for that luxury. But if you need a van that isn't huge, the size and dimensions of this will suit the job, then I think you'll struggle to get something quite as comfortable and enjoyable to cruise around in. Let me know your comments in the video down below. Have you had a Vito in your van life, and how did you find it? Please leave a comment, and I'll talk to you in the next one.